So we'll look at many of these in the conversation we are having today. But we started this chat this morning on Morning Update with how you saw the way the people massed up to welcome the former president. I want us to watch a short video for you to appreciate how they welcomed him, and then we'll begin the conversation on campaign issues. Represents the ambience, the atmosphere around Bolgatanga when the former president and his campaign team arrived last night around 10 p.m. I was having a conversation with you earlier about your impression. Were you surprised, and what could have triggered this reaction among the youth?
Look, basically, if you look at the political temperature in the Upper East region, and particularly in the Frafra speaking areas, you realize that people are really excited about the December 7th elections. There are a lot of people who really cannot wait to vote, because if you look at the 4 years of John Mahama and the 4 years of Akufo-Addo, clearly people feel so disappointed, particularly how, for example, Galamsey issues, for example. You realize that most of our people will migrate to the south for a lot of businesses. Now, particularly the male youth, they go to mining areas. Most of them are back home now. Families, if you go to villages and you see block houses, most likely there are people who were working in the mining areas and got resources to come back and put up.
So you are referring to those who were into small-scale mining?
Small-scale mining.
Okay.
And so,
which is generally described as Galamsey.
Galamsey.
I want this clarity because some may misconstrue it to be that the party is just supporting illegal mining. That's why I want to be clear.
I'm just trying to talk about the fact that a lot of them were in the mining sites.
Right.
They were working in those areas. And because of the indiscriminate manner in which the government handled the whole issue of illegal mining, and the fact that the people who now engage in these activities are people who are seen as party people. These are people who have come back home. And what they are doing is that at the various village areas, most of them are into a serious campaign just to let people know how their jobs are messed up. Two, if you look at the way government, even in the Upper East, the discrimination in terms of, for example, if you look at these COVID funds that came, basically they were targeted at the MPP. And so people who would have, for example, voted for MPP in the 2016 just because of the misconception and the propaganda that came up as to the fact that the then NDC government was involved in corruption and what have you, all of them have not been able to compare what JM did and his government as compared to Akufo-Addo.
So in your opinion, it is a matter of protest votes or protest against government for some policies which has not benefited Ghanaians in general?
Actually, calling it protest may not be. It is just a question of coming back home. Because these were originally NDC guys who, for one reason or the other, bought into the propaganda of the NPP in 2016.
Let me draw your attention to some few notes I put together. For example, in the Upper East region, which is your base, if you look at the analysis of results of elections since 2000, you'd realize that the NPP has been making gains gradually since 2000. If you compare the results in 2012 and 2016, you realize that the NPP managed to secure as much as 30,000 votes more in 2016 compared to what NDC got in 2012. And then in 2016, the votes John Mahama had as a candidate dropped by around 3,700 votes. So you are comparing an NDC candidate, John Mahama, whose votes or vote margin dropped by around 3,000, and then you have Nana Akufo-Addo as a candidate in opposition then, who managed to secure as much as 30,000 votes. And now they are in government, an incumbent government. Why are you so confident that the dynamics will play to the favor of NDC this time?
It's just because of the economic conditions of the country. You will have to also take note of the fact that for Upper East, again, I'll go back to the migration. Most people go down south, particularly because of economic activities. You have a situation where just after the rainy season, you know, if you look at the Upper East, just after the rainy season, you have 9 months that people are not really engaged in any economic activity. So they go down south. In 2016, most of them did not come back home to register. Most of them did not come back, to vote. Because you had situations where people felt that, look, in 2012 they voted. The NPP created an impression that, look, the NDC government was corrupt, was involved in maladministration and what have you. And so most of them actually did not take the pain to come back home again to vote. The situation is a bit different this time around. If you look at the figures in terms of registration, most of the people who registered are those who stay at home. They are not down south. Because, you know, the NDC's policy was that wherever you thought you were going to be December 7th, register there. That was the encouragement that was given.
That's going into 2020.
2020. Wherever. So, if you look at the people now who have registered, they are the people who will stay and really vote. The numbers have increased. You look at developmental projects. I give you a typical example. There were 42 communities that were under contract and the contractors were working, for example, in my constituency. Up to today, not a single project has been completed in 4 years. People are disappointed. Of course, you see, when it gets to election, you have these machinations of trying to create a semblance of people coming to work. But basically, people have realized that all projects that were initiated by the erstwhile government have been stalled. And these are projects that have direct impact on their lives. Because they've seen communities where, for example, projects have been completed and what you have. Take our regional hospital, for example. People are very angry about it. Bolga Hospital now is almost like a death trap. If you were to be sick and you were going to Bolga Hospital, it's like a death trap. There was, under the Eurojet, project, you have the Upper East Hospital that was under construction. That has been stalled for 4 solid years. People have seen the project. They've seen that for the past 4 years, it has been stalled. And people are dying because this is supposed to be a referral hospital from all the various districts. And you'll be surprised that when people are sick, they rather move into the districts instead of coming into the region because of the state of the hospital. So people see all this, and these things have direct impact on their lives. And that is the reaction you are getting in this. And that's why, if you were to ask any NDC person, he will tell you that not only will we maintain the 12, but we will actually take up all the 15 seats.
Is it a result of perhaps the failure of traditional authorities here who have so much influence, who may not have prompted government on the need to complete that project? Because the vice president's hometown is just next door. We drove through Wale Wale to this place. or government simply neglected the project like several others you want to refer to?
Any responsible government will not need any promptings from anybody to really deliver the goods to the people. There are projects that have been that were initiated using the taxpayers' money. It is only fair that when you come into government, you take stock of all ongoing projects. See how do you complete those ones before you make any move. Now you have very huge amounts of money invested in projects that, to a very large extent, would have benefited the people. Anytime a project stalls, what then happens is that you have deterioration of even those projects. For example, if it is a road construction and you do not complete it, you know that after a period, you will have to come back to square one. You have buildings that you start putting up. If you do not complete them, you see that there are always deterioration. So beyond just the fact that the projects are not completed, you have even a deterioration of those projects.
And so far, you have referred to only one project, the Upper East Regional Project under Eurojet, which has stalled for the last 4 years. Are there several other examples you can confidently point to and say that these were supposed to have continued and they are sitting there?
Let me tell you, I'll give you a typical one. If you take, and I'm going to use percentages, if you take just electricity alone, in terms of hooking to the national grid, at the time that the NDC was in government, the percentage in terms of access was just about 22%. As we speak today, 66%, and the 66% was as at 2016. You know that if you look at the national figure, even the NPP nationally have only added about 1.6% to the national grid. So it tells you clearly that this is one project that was very dear to the people. Two, you have this road, the Boko Road, that comes under the Brazilian, what they call the project. This is a project that should have been completed by now. That's a project that is not on. You have a lot of what we call the CHIPS compounds that were spread all over the place. You remember that Upper East is predominantly a farming area. And so you do not have those metropolitan cities that you have down south. It's predominantly a farming
Most
area.
of the communities
are deprived. And so very little things. So if you look at the town water systems that were brought into, into Upper East, because if you look at some of the bells, they are they have a lot of fluoride in the water. And so many people, there were a lot of attempts to put up boreholes that for one reason or the other, after those investments, people cannot do because of fluorosis that affects kids. So there were a lot of town water systems that have been put up in the various villages for people to just have quality water. If you're in Accra, you wouldn't appreciate the point I'm making. There are people who get up in the morning and they will have to walk God knows how long just to be able to fetch water.
And carry it all the way from.
And it is a routine thing. It's not like Accra where for one reason or the other you have Ghana Water refuses, the water becomes, there's a curtailment of supply of water. And then you see people moving with their Kufuor gallons and what have you. In Upper East, it's a daily activity by women. And so anytime you have a town water system, Accra, you may not appreciate it. In Upper East, you will appreciate those things. So the projects, if you look at basically, the projects were there. And most of them were ongoing. Some had been completed. And so people have compared that. If you compare that, how can you have a sitting president, come all the way after covering about 900 and something kilometers just to commission street lights as the main project for 4 years? Street lights. Yesterday when you were driving, you saw those street lights.
I did.
That was what the president came to Upper East to commission.
Well, yesterday, NDC's presidential candidate, John Dramani Mahama, wrapped up his day's activities in the Bolga East constituency where he was ensconced Naba Amaltenga. I don't know whether the pronunciation is
Amaltenga, which simply means development chief.
Development chief. I want us to watch how the ceremony took place even before he addressed the mini Deba, which took place in front of one of the E-blocks in this capital, Bolgatanga. Yeah. Let's watch it now.
Your Excellency, we the chiefs here present have seen your great and gargantuan infrastructure development, and on this our district, and hereby today the 22nd November 2020 have the greatest pleasure to enskin you Naba Amaltenga, which means chief developer.
Bolga East, yes.
Naba Amaltenga the first.
Just for the purpose of those watching us, what is the name of that chief, and how significant is what happened yesterday?
Is it significant to say that you are Naba Amaltenga? Simply means that a development chief. The significance of that, and I'll have to state this very clearly, is the fact that John Mahama is an individual who has been associated with huge development projects. Indeed, this was in Gambibgo. This
Gambibgo chief.
Yes. So Gambibgo chief in the Bolga East constituency, or the Bolga East constituency. You recall that at that particular, there was one of the completed E-blocks that is not taking a lot of students into what they call it, into the.
So demanded that it should be made a boarding facility.
Yes. So if you heard the request from the people, they were now asking for a dormitory, so that people, because there are a lot of kids from Bolga town who attend school in Gambibgo, and so the distance is a bit. So they were appealing for what they call it, accommodation facility for the students. And of course, it's not only accommodation, but also other things like the dining halls and what have you. And so the significance of it was that the people of Gambibgo associate development to John Mahama. And it is very clear. If you go to Gambibgo now, look, the former regional minister was from Gambibgo. You have a presidential staffer from Gambibgo. And for 4 years, nothing has happened there until now, that you have a situation where all they do is to come. And I believe that's why.
But yesterday, we drove along a dusty road when we just veered off the Bolga town,
yes,
main
through
towards
yes.
that area.
And this was
it represents some attempt to improve on the road.
No, this was a project in 2016 that has been left. So you have a deterioration of it.
Sure?
Yes, it's a deterioration. So you saw those activities. These were projects that were started, and it was being constructed by a company known as Leskin. They were involved in that, in constructing that particular road. And for 4 years, they left it. Indeed, if you had also gone just before you entered Zuarungu, you see that on your right, there was another road that goes into the Zuarungu township. It was also part of, the projects that were being run. And all these things were left. That's the point I've been trying to tell you. People are frustrated because you have situations where projects that had been initiated, and people saw that, look, in the next year or so, there was going to be some improvement in their lives.
Because that project would have been completed.
And you see, yes, and particularly the dusty roads. If you look in Bolga, most of our women, they sell along the road. Because of the dusty nature of the roads, most of them, their businesses have collapsed. Because, for example, you cannot go and sell food. You cannot go and sell anywhere.
If you have a shop,
and you have provisions, you cannot. So it has direct effect in their lives.
Now, I will engage you further because we have several other issues, and you are an energy consultant. And there are some developing issues in the energy sector, especially power, when just recently the independent power producers threatened to cut down supply to the national grid. We'll look at all those things. But the former president yesterday spoke to issues about comparing records. This is how he put it when he addressed the mini Deba in the Bolga East constituency.
We remember that 4 years ago, 2016, during the same campaign for the election, the current president, for those of you who understand Twi, he said, Ghana Yaya Mobododo. Ghana Yaya Mobododo means we're very sorrowful. Ghana is very sorrowful. Ghana Yaya Mobododo. Yet Sikaso Akomdiye. We're sitting on money and yet we're hungry. For those of you who understand Twi. And I think we give him the opportunity, he's going to transform this country within 18 months. Today we're hungrier than we were in 2016. Today we are more sorrowful than we were in 2016. Our economy is completely destroyed. Within 4 years, this government has borrowed 157 billion cedis. Within 4 years of John Mahama's administration, I borrowed 56 billion. This government has borrowed 157 billion. And yet with the 56 billion, I can point to all these projects. I can point to this community day school. I can point to the Bolga Regional Hospital. I can point to the Upper West Regional Hospital. I can point to the KJTR market. I can point to the Bolga School. I can point to the Tamale Airport. I can point to the Accra Airport. I can point to the Temahabo. I can point to the Atonsu Market. I can point to the Tampo Market, Asawasi Market, Kumewu Hospital, Safari Hospital, Sewa Hospital, Ekpai Hospital. I can point to many road projects across the country. And so I always challenge the NPP that with 157 billion, come and point out one
little of what the former president said. In fact, he addressed several issues. We'll be playing a bit more later. This is about a picture or a national picture about some of the initiatives he undertook. He's challenging the incumbent president to also talk to Ghanaians about what they can boast of, concrete projects that will have massive influence on the people of Ghana. But we are in Upper East. If I am a citizen of Upper East, I want to hear what the NDC, what John Mahama has started, has completed, has done to improve my life. Or let's say we are in Bolga now. What are some of the things you can proudly talk about as an MP for Bongo and a member of the NDC?
Yes, okay. Basically, let me if you say the MP for Bongo, then I'm forced to go back to Bongo and deal with Bongo. If you look at the road between Bolga and Bongo, it's a third road now.
Bolga Bongo.
Bongo. This was a road that was so terrible. Now you can drive because it's just about 15 kilometers from Bolga. I'm talking of the capital. It's about 15 kilometers. You can do that now in say 15 minutes thereabout. You can also 10 minutes. You can get to Bongo. This one area that really changed a lot of things. The moment that road was constructed, you had a lot of developments along the road. And so you will see that Bolga now is, to a very large extent, has extended into more people. People stay in Bongo and work now in Bolga. Those days you used not to have it. Everybody was interested in rather coming to stay in Bongo. If you look at educational facilities, you can count 35 buildings, dormitories, classrooms, and then labs in Bongo. 35 of them. If you look at the total investment in terms of infrastructure in just Bongo alone, in 4 years was about 7 million, as compared to 3 million under the NPP.
So, because the conversation is looking at Upper East,
yes,
because we obviously, I understand we'll go to your constituency either tomorrow or Wednesday. Is it
That's
tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
And so, if the opportunity comes, I'm sure those issues will come up.
Yeah.
Let's look at Upper East in general. What are the campaign issues today as we speak? What is informing the masses, especially the youth?
Basically, it's infrastructure and job. Basically, it's infrastructure and job. If you were to look at the youth today, most of them are not happy. But there's a particular element, and I say this because of my own rounds. This whole idea of trying to bring about this apprenticeship, where
That's
people...
the TVET.
Not the TVET portion, but the fact that you could take people to master apprentice for them to train them. For example, if you were to take a carpenter, you know, in the manifesto, it is very clear that you would be given an opportunity to learn under a master or a mistress, and then become what they call in terms of skills. Because there are a lot of people who may not have completed school, and there are no avenues. And if you look at the Upper East, and particularly our rain patterns, we only have rains for just about 2 months, 3 months. 9 months is
dry
fallow.
season.
So you see that...
And the people are basically farmers.
Farmers. So you have a situation where the person is only busy for 3 months, and he has,
9 months,
9 months
struggle to survive.
And that is why you see, poverty very, very, very endemic in this particular area. So that particular policy is key. This free
apprenticeship
and this free primary health care. I'm telling you, you go to communities in Upper East, and you have a situation where somebody just has very common malaria, and the person cannot go to the hospital because he has an expired insurance that he or she is unable to renew. The fact that the kids are, they hear of this, they are excited about that. The other issue is about how the kids have been home for 9 months.
But it's because of COVID.
Yeah, it's because of COVID. That is the clear thing. It's because of COVID. But people believe that based on the experience of, for example, the SS students who had gone to school and come back, and there are no issues that happen, they feel that government could have put up some policies to ensure that even the kids can still go to school in a very safe environment.
But we got the impression from the onset that they were going to use technology, maybe teaching on television sets or having access to internet, and so homes could go to some of the websites to get free tuition.
Let me tell you, that is an investment. How many homes in the Upper East have even just normal smartphones?
What about network?
Network is terrible. And that's the point.
Beyond Bolgatanga.
Bolga, look, if you even take Bolga, it's not all parts of Bolga that you have the network being right. The cost of data. I'm talking of areas where people are very poor. The person cannot even feed 3 times a day. And you're asking a parent to go buy data for a kid to access e-learning.
So is it that the people believe that government was actually manipulating how to effectively manage the COVID situation, and that is why this reaction is manifesting in their reaction towards
you talk to somebody typically, he will ask you a question. If the argument is that you do not want crowded areas because of the transmission rate, why would you permit people to go for funerals? Why would you allow campaigns to go on? Why would people go to the markets? That is the logic they are drawing. The fact that you go, if you were to see in Upper East, it's just like in the South, a typical funeral. It is so crowded. It is so crowded. So people see that and say, why would you allow us to do this when our kids cannot go to school?
Edward, I'll come back to you. Edward Bawa is the MP for Bongo. He's a former consultant to the Energy Ministry. He's a communicator, and I'm sure you've listened to him trying to articulate the position of the NDC on campaign issues towards the 2020 elections. We'll be taking a short break, but before that, I want us to listen to the MP for Bolga East, Dominic Ayine, because yesterday he spoke at the event. We'll listen to him and then move on to the short break. And when we return, we'll look at corruption, we'll look at the IPPs and the energy sector, and of course, we'll hear President Mahama speak again at the Deba yesterday.
I remember distinctly, as your Deputy Attorney General in charge of prosecution, how valiantly you fought corruption, how you instructed the Attorney General, my boss, Honorable Marietta Bureau Apia, to take action on corrupt practices within our government. And yet, within the media space, within the public sphere, we were the ones who were labeled a corrupt government. And I remember distinctly you said something about the paradox of exposure. That the more you expose people in your government, the more people say you are corrupt. Your Excellency, I am sure you are a living witness to what has happened. The last 4 years have shown that those who were shouting on the rooftops about corruption are more corrupt. That they were throwing the first stone, even though they are sinners. The resignation of Mr. Martin Amido as special prosecutor bears ample testimony to what has happened within this government when it comes to corruption. I'm here tonight on behalf of the people of Bolga East to thank you profusely for this wonderful gift that you have given us. But we are an Oliver Twist in this place. You heard the chief saying that he wants to turn it into a boarding secondary school. I assured him and his people when I was going around campaigning in Gambingo that within the first 5 months of your government, we will start the construction of the boarding facility.
You heard Dominic Ayeni, who is the Bolga East NDC parliamentary candidate. He's spoken, and this is Akayet Hotel in Bolga. In fact, we are just at the swimming pool area. It's one of the best facilities here. I never anticipated that this home away from home is here. So if you are in Accra and you want to just move away from the hustle and all the pollution and the noise, just come to Bolga and you will never regret it. We'll be taking a break now and listen to a few commercials. This program is sponsored by X Natural Mineral Water. These bottles are very, very, very sexy. If you have a program, just go for them. Very healthy. Go for your water. We'll be taking a break now. When we come back, I will continue my conversation with Edward Bauer.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural.
I have 3 kids. I make my money from Okada riding. So consider Okada riders better and address us in your manifesto. That's what I have for you. And that's the only reason why I'll vote for Mahama. Nanado doesn't ride motor, but you, Mahama, I've been seeing you on motorbike.
John Mama manifesto no de bano. Me media wo mo ye Okada fo no. Me say already or je Okada fo tum no o mo medwuma ya me bebo me pa. Na because of edwuma ni ho na boys no so o mo nya mo san edwuma o mo fandidi. Ye yina ye edwuma we Okada ni ye de edwuma ye de nya kaka akra ye de tu ye ho. Ebi wo yire ebi wo ma a mo ko school ni ade. Isi a udi moto udi kokroma esi buei na police achew. Aden ye nya to aba e ma MPP since 2000 and I'm starting say to aba ma MPP. Aden ato aba ama still ya raso ye den e wa ho kirem. Na say JM aba say o ma kwan me ya den ya ye adwuma dia. Ene ye nyina be ya adwuma ba ko ni ato ama no. Aden ti ya ntoma no because Saudi JM ba na odi moto odi kokrom na police anya dey ya hawa e dey enta won to ma no ha ya brasa 52000 up to now odi moto kokrom na ye chew adani ya kosa ma park ya meti moto so na police no ache me adi o se ma chew mu kwa me hwa mu dada.
So this is morning update. We are live from Akayet Hotel here in Bolgatanga. Yesterday, the former president John Dramani Mahama, NDC's 2020 candidates, arrived here to begin a 3-day tour of Upper East region. This morning, I have Edward Bauer, MP for Bongo, as my guest, and the conversation is on NDC's activities in the region, the campaign issues ahead of 2020, and why they think the NDC has a story to tell. Where are we going today, Edward?
Yeah, basically, you're going to the eastern part of the region, and that is Nabdam area, to Zebil, Binduri, Garu, what do you call it, Tampane, and then of course Boko Central. So these are the areas, and that's the eastern part of the region.
And how far is it from Bolga for those watching us far away beyond the region?
Yeah, it's just because of just parts of the road that is not very good. And I was telling you that was part of the project of John Mahama. You will need roughly about an hour thereabout to get there, about an hour drive.
Before we went for the break, we listened to Dominic Ayeni, who is the MP for Bolga East. He was talking to issues about corruption and so on. Actually, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, who has been speaking to the latest developments on Ejapa, PDS, outstanding corruption-related cases, also spoke passionately about this yesterday when he addressed the mini Deba. I want us to listen to him, and then I'll engage Edward further on our conversation.
Everywhere you go, there is nothing. Even in their own stronghold in Ashanti, the chiefs are saying it, that these last 4 years, there is not a single project that they have seen, development project in their traditional areas. All you see is corruption. At the time we were in office, they tarred us with a brush of corruption. And they made so much noise about it. Today, the president is bathing in corruption. And I say that because the allegations of corruption are of people close to him. And that's why I say he's bathing in it. You can be president, there might be a CEO or something who does something, you probably are not aware. But when you become aware, you must take action against it. But when you take cases like PDS, and you hear his own brother and his cousin and others discussing how to distribute shares of PDS, then the president is bathing in corruption. We have their voices on tape discussing how somebody should reduce his shares so that they will see how to share the thing. And the guy said, I won't reduce it. I won't go below 40%. We all heard that on the tape. As if that was not enough, then you have Ejapa. And everybody associated with Ejapa is close to the president or his senior associates. And the Office of the Special Prosecutor has released a damning report on Ejapa. And so when we say the president is bathing in corruption, we literally mean he's bathing in corruption.
So you heard NDC's 2020 presidential candidate, John Dramani Mahama. Now, 2016, you were tagged with corruption. I'm talking about NDC as a party. 2020, corruption has become an issue. What makes it different at your time and today? And why you think Ghanaians must be interested in incidents unfolding this time around?
I've always indicated that if you hear an MPP man talk about corruption or an NDC man talk about corruption, you think that there's no objectivity in it. So for me, my first point I always make when it comes to corruption is the CPI, the Corruption Perception Index. That is independent of both parties. You realize that the worst performance of NDC, and particularly under John Mahama, is still better than the MPP in 4 years. So that is my first take. But you realize that people just see it. It's negatively when you see, and that's one of the things the former president was talking about, the issue of PDS. In fact, PDS became an issue to the extent that the ordinary person knew that there was a clear attempt to a very large extent, take over almost a $22 billion CD, asset, just by a family.
That's ECG.
The ECG, the valuation of ECG. You could see it. And there were records in terms of audios and what have you. You had documents to prove that. You have machinations and you had people who virtually just wanted to take that up. You have situations, let me not even talk about those ones. Just currently, the NLA, scandal. Items, procurement that was supposed to be far less. The amount of money, if you look at the markup, the padding of those figures. If you look at the situation in Cocoa Board. So, if you look at all these things, and people see them, and they match the level at which people are really just squandering state resources, and they look at their lives, and they compare to just the 4 years, and the accusations that were made by these same people, people get so disappointed.
Now, we'll go into that, but let's look at PDS, because I remember when the issues came up, you were one of the spokespersons, you, John Jinapor, and a few others were very outspoken on PDS. The president at the time, after US decided to pull out the remaining amount, gave us the assurance that there will be a way out. What has happened since? And many people have asked, does PDS owe ECG? And are there people who must be punished for what Ghana has lost? What can you share with us?
Yeah, basically, look, if for one reason, the guarantee, that's where I start always from, and that's what the former president has always constantly made. If the guarantee for that particular deal, and that was supposed to be a trigger, was fraudulently procured, all the collections between March and October, in terms of the receipts, in terms of bills, the tariffs they were taking, these are monies that have not been audited. We are not too sure what actually happened, particularly now that we know that there was no single investment into the deal. So those monies
That's
have not
by PDS
by
at the time.
PDS by the consortium. So you realize that these monies have not been audited. That's why the former president made a point that, look, when I come, the first thing I'm going to do is to audit that account. And people who are found culpable must pay. Because you had people who were being paid with the taxpayers' money, who were responsible for certain decisions before the whole asset was handed over to the consortium. And so if you look at all these factors, currently we do not have all the facts because government is not ready to be transparent on those issues.
But as a member of parliament, you should be able to demand it.
Look, as a member of parliament, and particularly as a member of the Mines and Energy Committee, we have consistently asked that government audits that. But you know how our parliament works. At the end of the day, by virtue of the majority that they have, to a very large extent, you say them and they fall on deaf ears. I'll give you another example. You know, up to today, you know the Boss scandal. We have not gotten the report.
The Boss scandal.
The Boss scandal. We've not gotten the report. You remember that there was a committee that was set up to investigate what had happened. Then suddenly we heard of a BNI report that had cleared the then MD. Parliament, and I remember I filed a question in Parliament asking that the report be made available to Parliament. As we speak today, that report has not been made. It has not been made. And I'm talking, if you look at the various scandals in those areas.
Many people may be privy. We don't have much time. We have about 2-3 minutes to wrap up. But the people in Upper East, are they following some of these sensitive national issues? Or they are bothered about bread and matters around their enclaves?
They are following them. They are following these issues. You know, luckily enough, these days, the source of information is so varied from social
Facebook
media,
to WhatsApp
and so they are following that. So they are following that. And in fact, some of them are experiencing these corruptions in their various districts. So even without even just following the national issues, just within the various districts, they see clear TV. And so they are following all those issues.
Edward Bauer is the MP for Bongo. He's my guest this morning. We'll be wrapping up shortly. I want us to go through a few text messages that have come in. This one says, the resignation of Martin Amidu was 100% anticipated. From the first day he was appointed till now, the missing excavators, tricycles, Japa bus, PDS, cash for seats, and so on and so forth. It's a long list, but this one came from Comrade Haya, the communicator, Shai Osu Doku. This one says, a good program, watching live from the US. It didn't come with a name. This one says, good morning, TVXYZ. Please, we are very much interested about the way you educate us, but my concern is that most of our people didn't get to understand you. So please come down to their level and explain what you are discussing in their languages. And he says it's called Ken. I am Joseph Aburia and interested in joining your conversation. I've read your text message. You said via a source. We don't have the opportunity to do phone calls because these are on the go programs we organize